Imagine a misty morning in the English countryside, back in the dark days of World War II, where a sprawling Victorian mansion called Bletchley Park stood like a silent sentinel against the storm of war raging across Europe. Inside its hushed halls and makeshift huts, a secret army of brilliant minds, gathered not with guns or tanks, but with pencils, paper, and the sheer force of intellect to crack the unbreakable, the Nazi Enigma code that shielded Hitler's deadliest commands from prying eyes. But here's the twist that still gives me chills. After all these years of spinning yarns about the war, the real heroes of this shadowy battle weren't the tuxedoed spies or the dashing code wizards you see in the movies. No, they were young women, ordinary girls from across Britain who stepped out of classrooms, typing pools, and debutante balls to become the unsung saviors of the Allied cause. These heroines, with their quick wits and unyielding determination, turned the tide of history one decrypted message at a time, and today I'm going to take you deep into their world, a tale of secrecy, sacrifice, and sheer genius that shortened the war by years and saved countless lives. If that hooks you like it does me every time I think about it, then do me a favor right now. Smash that subscribe button so you never miss another one of these fireside chats about the forgotten corners of history. Give this video a hearty like to show your appreciation and share it with your pals who love a good war story. Because folks, these ladies deserve to have their names echoed far and wide. All right, let's settle in and journey back to those fateful days. It all started in the late 1932 when the clouds of war were gathering over Europe, and Britain knew it had to prepare for the worst. The Government Code and Cipher School, or GC&CS as it was known, had been quietly operating since the end of the First World War, but as Hitler's aggression ramped up, they needed a bigger base, a place where they could expand their efforts to intercept and decode enemy communications. Enter Bletchley Park, a rambling estate in Buckinghamshire, about 50 miles north of London, bought by the government in 1938 for just that purpose. It was perfect, secluded, surrounded by fields and woods, with room to build those ramshackle huts that would become legendary. Now the Enigma machine, that infernal device invented by a German engineer named Arthur Scherbius right after World War I, was the heart of the Nazis' cryptographic empire. Picture this: a typewriter-like gadget with rotors and plugs that scrambled messages into billions of possible combinations, making them seem utterly indecipherable. The Germans were so confident in it, they used it for everything from U-boat orders to battlefield tactics, believing no one could crack it. But oh, how wrong they were, thanks in large part to the groundwork laid by Polish cryptanalysts, who smuggled out vital info just before the invasion of Poland in 1939. That handoff to the British at a secret meeting in the Pyrrhi Forest was like passing a torch that would light the way for Bletchley. When the war kicked off in earnest, Bletchley Park swelled from a handful of boffins to thousands of workers, and here's where our heroines come in. Women made up roughly 75% of the workforce. By the war's end, that's about 7,500 ladies from all walks of life, stepping up when their country called. They weren't just there to make tea or file papers, though some did start in clerical roles. No, many were the sharpest minds recruited from universities, crossword puzzles in newspapers, and even high society circles. Take, for instance, how they scouted talent. The Daily Telegraph ran a cryptic crossword competition in 1942, and the winners were quietly approached for jobs at Bletchley. Because if you could unravel those twisted clues, you might just have what it took to untangle Nazi ciphers. I remember reading about that in old declassified memos and chuckling to myself, thinking what a clever way to find lateral thinkers. These women came from middle-class homes, often with degrees in math languages or even classics, and they arrived wide-eyed at this bizarre world of secrecy. Sworn to the Official Secrets Act, they couldn't breathe a word to anyone. Not family, Not friends, sometimes not even to each other, about what went on behind those barbed wire fences. Can you imagine the weight of that living a double life, where your daytime job might save the world, but at night you had to pretend you were just a boring typist or dispatch rider? It was a pressure cooker, but these gals thrived in it. Let's talk about some of these remarkable women, starting with Joan Clark, a name that might ring a bell if you've seen that film about Alan Turing. But trust me, the real story is even more compelling. Joan was born in 1917 in London, the daughter of a clergyman, and she was a mathematical prodigy, earning a double first in mathematics at Cambridge's Newnham College, though back then, women weren't awarded full degrees. Just the title, which always struck me as a raw deal. Recruited in 1940, she joined Hut 8 under Turing himself, working on naval Enigma, the toughest nut because the Kriegsmarine added extra rotors, making it fiendishly complex. Joan wasn't just an assistant, she was a full-fledged cryptanalyst, one of the few women in that elite role developing techniques like banbarismus, a method to narrow down rotor settings by spotting message overlaps. She and her team broke codes that revealed U-boat positions, helping to turn the Battle of the Atlantic from a near disaster for the Allies into a victory. And get this, she was briefly engaged to Turing, though it didn't last due to his personal struggles, but their professional bond was unbreakable. Joan kept working in cryptanalysis after the war at GCHQ until retirement in 1977, and was made an MBE in 1946. Though her full story only emerged decades later. What a life, huh? Rising above the era's prejudices to outsmart the enemy. Then there's Mavis Beatty, née Lever, a spitfire of a woman born in 1921 in Dulwich to working-class parents. She was studying German at University College London when war broke out and got pulled into Bletchley in 1940 as an assistant to the eccentric Dilly Knox in his cottage team. Mavis was only 19, but she had a knack for languages and patterns. Her big break came in 1941 when she decrypted an Italian naval message that lacked the usual formalities, revealing a major fleet movement toward the British at Cape Matapan. That intel led to a crushing Royal Navy victory, sinking 3 cruisers and 2 destroyers without losing a ship. Mavis later cracked the Abwehr Enigma used by German spies by spotting a repeated phrase about a girlfriend named Rosa, which helped map the machine's wiring. She married fellow codebreaker Keith Beatty, and they had 3 kids, but she never spoke of her work until the 70s. I once heard in an interview how she described the thrill of that first break, like solving a puzzle that could save lives. It gives me goosebumps every time. Another standout was Jane Fawcett née Hughes, who worked in Hut 6, the nerve center for Army and Air Force Enigma. Jane was in her early 20s, fresh from finishing school in Switzerland when she joined in 1940. Hut 6 was a women's domain, dim, cold, and stuffy with rows of Typex machines. British versions of Enigma, where they'd input daily keys and decode messages. On May 25th, 1941, Jane decoded a signal about the Bismarck, the pride of the German Navy, revealing it was heading to Brest for repairs. That tip-off allowed the RAF and Navy to hunt it down and sink it 2 days later, a pivotal moment that boosted Allied morale. Jane later said she felt like an also-ran compared to the sailors, but without her and her Hut 6 sisters, those heroes wouldn't have known where to aim. She kept mum about it all, even to her husband, until the 90s, and went on to a career in opera and conservation, proving these women were forces in peacetime too. Now let's not forget the thousands of unsung ones, like the Wrens who operated the Bombe machines, those hulking electromechanical beasts designed by Turing and Gordon Welchman to test Enigma settings at high speed. Jean Valentine, a Wren from Scotland, joined at 18 and worked in Hut 11 on the Bombe, living in billets and pulling 8-hour shifts around the clock. The machines were noisy, hot, and finicky, requiring precise menu setups based on Crib's guessed plain text. Jean and her colleagues stopped the rotors when a hit occurred, often after hours of whirring, and they'd rush the results to the codebreakers. Without these operators, the whole operation would have ground to a halt. Jean later helped reconstruct a Bombe for the museum and toured giving talks. She was a gem, always emphasizing how young they all were, just girls doing their bit. Betty Webb, another ATS girl, worked on Japanese codes after mastering German paraphrasing decrypted messages to hide the source. She recalled the camaraderie, the shared sense of purpose amid the tedium and tension. These women wired Colossus, the world's first programmable computer soldered circuits, ran dispatch bikes through blackout nights, and compiled index cards of enemy terms. A massive analog database. They faced sexism too. Some men doubted they could handle the intellectual rigors, but as one veteran put it, we showed them wrong every day. The impact? Ultra-intelligence from Bletchley saved lives in North Africa, alerted to Rommel's plans turned D-Day from gamble to success by deceiving about the invasion site, and crippled U-boats by rerouting convoys. Historians like Sir Harry Hinsley estimate it shortened the war by 2 to 4 years, sparing millions. But life at Bletchley wasn't all glory. It was grueling with long hours, poor food rationing, and constant fear of spies or bombs. Yet there were moments of levity dances in the ballroom, amateur theatricals, and even romances like Mavis and Keith's. Winston Churchill visited in 1941, calling them the geese that laid the golden eggs but never cackled a nod to their silence. He ensured they got better rations after seeing the setup. As the war progressed, Bletchley grew to 10,000 souls with outstations handling traffic. But the core was those huts, where women like Margaret Rock, a mathematician in Knox's team, broke, Floridora the Italian code, or Roseanne. Colchester, who flew planes before joining as a decoder. Margaret Betts, another recent passer at 99 operated machines, and kept secrets till the end. Their stories emerged slowly after 1974, when Winterbotham's book lifted the veil, but many took vows to the grave. In 2009, the government finally honored survivors with badges, a belated thank you. Thinking back on my own brushes with history, I've chatted with a few veterans over the years, their eyes lighting up as they recall the rush of a break, the bond of shared secrecy. It's like they were part of a grand adventure, one that shaped our world. But we're just scratching the surface here, folks. The deeper we go, the more incredible it gets, from the Polish prelude to the American allies who built their own Bombes. Hang in there, because there's so much more to unpack about how these heroines not only cracked codes, but shattered glass ceilings in a man's war. Speaking of which, if this tale of triumph is firing you up as much as it does me, pause for a second and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video to help spread the word. Comment below with your thoughts on these amazing women, maybe share a family story from the war, and pass it on to friends who could use a dose of real inspiration. Alright, back to the story. Let's dive into the early days when Bletchley was just getting its feet wet. It was August 1939. The eve of war, and the first wave of codebreakers arrived by train, greeted by a motley crew of academics and linguists. The mansion's ballroom became a canteen, the stables, workshops, and soon wooden huts sprouted like mushrooms. The Enigma challenge was daunting. The machine had 3 to 5 rotors, each with 26 positions, plus a plug board swapping letters, up to 10 quadrillion settings. The Poles had cracked early versions using Zygalski sheets perforated cards to find patterns, but the Germans upped the ante. Enter Alan Turing, fresh from Princeton with his theoretical machine ideas. He led Hut 8 on naval codes, while John Tiltman and others tackled army signals. But it was the women who turned theory into practice. Take the decoding rooms, where teams of young ladies sat at Typex machines, typing in keys found by bombs, and watching for German phrases to emerge, like Bitte or Hail Hitler common cribs. If gibberish, they'd adjust and try again under time pressure, because messages were only valid for 24 hours. One slip and a convoy could be lost. Jane Fawcett described the hut as freezing in winter, boiling in summer, with cigarette smoke hanging thick, but the focus was laser sharp. Mavis Beatty, in the cottage with Knox. A quirky chap who worked in his bathrobe broke Italian Enigma. First, in 1940, by guessing a message started with no additives, a naval term, allowing them to reverse engineer the rotors. That led to Matapan, where Admiral Cunningham ambushed the Italians based on her decrypt. Cunningham even disguised himself as a Maltese fisherman to avoid tipping off spies. What drama! As 1941 dawned, the Battle of the Atlantic raged, with U-boats sinking hundreds of thousands of tons monthly. Hut 8 struggled until they captured Enigma keys from weather ships, and U-110 in May, including codebooks that gave Joan Clark and team a breakthrough. They started reading Shark the U-boat net regularly, by summer turning the tide. Imagine the elation in that hut, when the first full message clarified lives, saved ships spared. But secrecy meant no celebrations, just quiet satisfaction, and on to the next. Women also handled traffic analysis, studying call signs and frequencies to map enemy networks even without decoding. Pamela Asquith, daughter of the former PM, did this, spotting patterns that predicted attacks. And the Colossus operators, wrens like Dorothy Duboisson, wired panels for Tommy Flower's behemoth, cracking Lorenz, the high-level teleprinter code used by Hitler himself. First run in 1943, Colossus sped breaks from weeks to hours, 10 machines by war's end, all run by women in shifts. Dorothy recalled the heat from valves, the clatter, but the pride in knowing they pierced the Führer's inner circle. Personal anecdotes abound, like how some women cycled miles to work in blackout dodging potholes, or dealt with billeting in local homes where nosy landladies pried. Food was spam and powdered eggs, but occasional treats from Churchill's priority list helped. Social life, tennis on the lawns, concerts by visiting musicians, even a drama club putting on plays to boost morale. But underlying it all was the strain, knowing a mistake could cost battles the weight of the world on young shoulders. Yet they persevered, proving women could excel in STEM long before it was fashionable. As we hit the midpoint of 42 things heated up with America entering the war, sharing tech and personnel, though Bletchley remained the hub. Code girls across the pond in Arlington Hall, and Dayton built bombs too. Over 10,000 women stateside, but that's another tale. Back at BP, the Abwehr break by Mavis in December 41 exposed spy rings across Europe, leading to double agents like Garbo, who fed false info for D-Day. Her method? Noticing lazy operators, repeated keys, or girlfriends' names, human errors that machines couldn't hide. It's those human touches that make the story sing, don't you think? The irony that perfectionist Germans were undone by sloppy habits? Fast forward to 1943, and the push for Overlord the Normandy invasion. Bletchley decrypts confirmed the deception operation. Fortitude fooled Hitler into thinking the attack was at Pas de Calais, not Normandy, by tracking his troop movements. Women in Hut 3 translated and analyzed, turning raw decrypts into actionable intel, sent via secure lines to commanders. One such heroine, Anne Mitchell, a linguist, paraphrased messages to mask sources her work directly aided Eisenhower. The pressure peaked in June 44 with V-weapons launching Bletchley pinpointed sites for bombing, saving London from worse. Through it all, the heroines remained anonymous, their contributions buried under secrecy acts. Many married, had families, pursued careers in teaching or civil service, but carried the pride inside. Betty Webb, for instance, joined post-war, but never boasted. It's only now, with museums, books, and films, that their light shines. As I reflect on these tales from declassified docs and memoirs, it's clear Bletchley wasn't just about machines. It was about people, especially these women who redefined possible. But hey, we're rolling along here, and if you're still with me loving this deep dive into history, why not take a quick break to subscribe? If you haven't, like the video, Comment your favorite part so far. Maybe something about Joan or Mavis, and share it with a buddy who digs World War II secrets. Your support keeps these stories coming. All right, let's keep going, because the later war years bring even more twists. By 1944, Bletchley was a well-oiled machine. With over 9,000 staff, the women powering everything from the frontline decoding to backroom support. Let's spotlight Margaret Rock, a close colleague of Mavis in Knox's team, a Cambridge math grad who cracked tough Italian and German variants. She was known for her precision tackling the GGG machine, a high-security Enigma variant used by Gestapo. Her breaks exposed atrocities in resistance networks aiding SOE agents. Margaret stayed in GCHQ, post-war rising high but humbly. Or Roseanne Colchester, an ATA pilot who ferried planes before Bletchley, where she decoded Luftwaffe traffic predicting air raids. Her dual skills, flying and cryptology, make her a double threat. As VE Day approached in '45, the huts buzzed with final pushes, breaking Japanese codes too after Pearl Harbor, though Enigma was the star. Women like Betty Webb shifted to purple, the Japanese diplomatic cipher, revealing surrender hints. When peace came, the order was burn, everything rotors, papers, machines smashed to keep secrets safe. Many women were demobbed, told to forget it all. Some struggled adjusting to civilian life where their skills weren't valued. Joan Clark faced pay discrimination, earning less than men for same work, a common gripe. Yet their legacy endures in modern computing. Turing's ideas birthed AI, but the women's hands built it. Today, Bletchley is a museum, honoring them with a roll of honor listing thousands. Reunions in the aughts brought tears as they finally shared stories. One veteran said it was like lifting a burden after 70 years. Their work not only won the war, but paved way for women in tech. Think Ada Lovelace's Spirit Reborn. As we wrap this chunk, think on that the unsung heroines didn't seek glory, they just did the job. But now, we celebrate them. Oh, folks, if you thought the tales from Bletchley Park were winding down, think again, because as we celebrate these heroines today, we owe it to them to dig even deeper into the lives of more of these extraordinary women who toiled in the shadows. Their stories pieced together from declassified files, veteran interviews, and those precious memoirs that only surfaced long after the guns fell silent. Take Margaret Betts, for starters, a name that might not ring as many bells as Turing's, but oh, what a force. She was born in 1923. She was just 19 when the war pulled her in, headhunted for her sharp school record, and thrust into the heart of the action at Bletchley after her brother's ship went down to a U-boat. A tragedy that lit a fire in her to strike back any way she could. As a Navy Wren, she operated those massive Bombe machines day in and day out, programming them to churn through possibilities, breaking German and even Japanese codes with a humility that defined her generation. She always said she was just part of the service staff, following orders and applying logic. But without her and her sisters keeping those beasts running, the whole ultra-intelligence machine would have sputtered to a halt. Imagine her in those huts. The clatter of rotors, the hum of electricity, the weight of knowing each successful break could avenge her brother and save others from the same fate. She kept her secrets tight even after the war, living a quiet life until her passing in 2023. At 99, her son Jonathan, sharing how she'd blend mystery and humor in her rare tales. Like the rumors swirling around town that Bletchley was some sort of home for wayward Wrens. What a way to deflect suspicion, huh? Her story reminds me of those chats I've had with old-timers over the years. The way their eyes sparkle when they recall the camaraderie amid the chaos. It's like they were all in on the biggest inside joke in history, one that turned the tide against Hitler. And then there's Ruth Bourne, another Wren who cut her teeth on those very Bombes. She described them as great metal bookcases with 100 spinning drums, 12 miles of wiring, and 1,000,000 soldered connections. Can you picture that? A young woman, fresh from training. Nice girls do what they're told, as she put it, tending to these monsters around the clock, in shifts that left you bone-tired, but buzzing with purpose. Ruth was part of the army of over 1,600 Wrens by 44, running more than 200 Bombes, processing thousands of Enigma messages daily, her hands on the wheels, stopping them when a potential hit lit up, rushing the results to the cryptanalysts upstairs. Without that relentless operation, the decodes that fed Montgomery in the desert, or Eisenhower for D-Day, simply wouldn't have flowed. It's estimated those efforts shaved years off the war, sparing God knows how many souls the butcher's bill. Ruth's reflections later in life capture the mix of tedium and thrill, the poor heating in the huts, the endless tea to keep going, but the quiet pride in knowing you were the beating heart of it all. Shifting gears a bit, let's shine a light on Roseanne Colchester née Medhurst, a teenager with a flair for Italian thanks to her childhood in Rome, where her dad worked for the embassy. She could have been ferrying planes as an ATA girl. But fate steered her to Bletchley, where her language skills landed her in the decoding rooms. One night, late shift grinding through routine decrypts, she hit pay dirt a message, spelling out that in 3.5 hours, Italian SM-79 torpedo bombers and SM-82 carriers would lift off from Tripoli, bound for Sicily. Quick as a flash, that intel winged its way to the RAF in North Africa, and boom, Allied fighters intercepted the lot, shooting them down before they could wreak havoc in the Desert War, which wrapped up by mid-43. Roseanne called it her standout moment, a rare glimpse of direct impact in a job that was mostly formulaic, plugging away without feedback. But, oh, the rush when it clicked. Lives saved, battles turned, all from a girl's keen eye on a string of code. It's moments like that that make you pause and wonder how many other such victories went unheralded, buried in the secrecy that cloaked everything at Bletchley. Now picture Pat O'Tram. Later, Davies, an 18-year-old Wren in the Y service. Those unsung listeners scattered across coastal stations, intercepting German radio chatter, phonetic-style Anton Bertha Caesar the lot, scribbling it down fast as Morse code flew in, and shipping it off to Station X without a clue what magic happened next. Pat bounced from Withersea in Yorkshire to Abbott's Cliff in Kent, ears glued to headsets, transcribing enemy ship signals that fed straight into the Enigma mill. Her training was brutal, but it forged her into a linchpin of the chain. Years later, at 95, she was still lecturing and sharing her story, crediting that wartime grit for propelling her to St. Andrews, Oxford, even Harvard, and a career as a TV producer. What a trajectory from blackout nights, straining for whispers over the ether. These women weren't just cogs, they were the spark, the ones who turned raw noise into gold for the codebreakers. And don't get me started on the indexers like Charlotte Betty Webb, née Vine Stevens, drafted into the ATS at 19. She started in the mansion itself, card indexing messages, by date call signs, those cryptic groups of letters and figures, meticulous work that built the analog database the pros relied on to spot patterns. No glamour, just accuracy under pressure, but her eagle eye got her bumped up in 44 to the Pentagon of all places, the only ATS girl there continuing her indexing amid the Yanks in that grand Anglo-American intel swap. Betty got an MBE in 2015 for her tireless campaigning to preserve Bletchley's memory, a fitting nod to a life of quiet service. Or take Pamela Rose, née Gibson, an actress yanked from the West End stage by a nosy godmother's tip-off she landed in Hutt. 4. Indexing naval decrypts her finishing school, German, proving priceless as she filed away secrets that shaped sea battles. Rising to head of naval indexing, she rubbed shoulders with the bigwigs in meetings, proving women could lead in that man's world. Her story's a reminder of the social mix at Bletchley Debs and Boffins, side by side the golf cheese. And Chess Society, as they jokingly called it. As the war ramped up in 43, the Numenry came alive, targeting the Lorenz cipher, those fish messages zipping between Hitler and his generals 100 times longer than Enigma beasts. Enter Joanna Chorley, nay, straddling a wren, awestruck by Colossus, that room-filling pioneer of computers with its ticking valves and whirring tapes. She called it magic and science combined, and confessed she loved the beast operating it. In shifts, to crack high command secrets that gave allies the edge in the final push. Joanna and her team, like Dorothy Duboisson and Elsie Booker, wired panels, soldered circuits, kept the thing humming through the night, their hands building the future of computing while dismantling the Reich's comms. Dorothy recalled the heat from those thousands of valves, the clatter that echoed in your dreams, but the thrill when a decode spilled out revealing troop movements or invasion plans, priceless. These gals were pioneers, unsung mothers of the digital age. Their work on Colossus, the world's first programmable electronic computer shortening, breaks from weeks to hours, 10 machines pounding away by VE Day, all crewed by women. Back in the early days, recruitment was a hush-hush affair, starting with professor types from Oxbridge. But as the need exploded, they cast wider nets, debutantes, linguists, even crossword whizzes spotted via that famous Daily Telegraph. Contest in 42. Solve it in 12 minutes, and you might get a tap on the shoulder. Women poured in from middle-class homes, some with math degrees, others fresh from school, skeptical at first, preferring frontline glamour, but once in, they shone despite the men's doubts about their intellectual stamina. By late 44, over 2,500. Wrens, 1,500 WAFs, 400 ATS girls swelled the ranks to nearly 10,000 souls, 3/4 female. The beating heart, as one vet put it. Conditions? Grim at times, huts dim and drafty shifts. Endless pressure cooker, intense but morale held with tennis on the lawns, concerts in the ballroom, even Churchill dropping by in 41 to boost spirits and rations, calling them his golden. Geese who never cackled. The secrecy was ironclad. Official Secrets Act binding them for decades. Loose lips could kill, as the posters warned many like Lady Jean, a Scottish Deb recruited via family ties, found the repetition maddening, perforating sheets for bombs, nearly driving her batty after a year. But she stuck it out, knowing it mattered. Their impact? Ultra Intel shortened the war by 2 years per historians, like Hinsley turning potential defeats into triumphs from El Alamein to the Bulge. Yet post-war they scattered, some like Joan to GCHQ, others to teaching or families their feats, locked away, until the 70s, when books cracked the silence. Reunions in the aughts brought tears and badges. In 09, a belated cheers. Thinking on it all from those declassified docs, it's clear these heroines didn't just break codes, they broke barriers, paving the way for women in tech, their legacy echoing in every algorithm today. But we're charging ahead here, and if this dive into more of these incredible lives has you hooked like it always does me, why not hit pause? Give that subscribe button a tap if you're new here, like the video to honor these ladies, comment with which story grabbed you most, maybe Roseanne's big break, or Margaret's quiet resolve, and share it far and wide with your history buff friends, because these tales deserve to live on. All right, let's press on, because the web of Bletchley stretches even further, with more unsung stars waiting in the wings.